been working in tech episode today. It's amazing. We took the whole of June away, and now we're back with a bang. Two different guests on the same day, and today we have Torrance on the live stream, who's a software engineer, and he's going to be talking us through his career journey, how he transitioned into tech, and all of that amazing stuff. Um, so a little bit of background. He actually has a degree in business administration while playing basketball on a scholarship, and then he explored entrepreneurship, real estate, car rentals, Airbnb. So a lot of entrepreneurial energy there. And then he started teaching, self-teaching in his coding journey. And then, that basically paved the way for him to become a software engineer at, a big bank. Um, so, Torrance, welcome to the live stream and, tell the people a little bit more about your journey.
Um, well, like you said, I'm Torrance. I'm an engineer. Um, did a lot of work, did a lot of grinding, a lot of late nights, early mornings. Um, but yeah, it was tough, but we're here now.
That's amazing. So I think one of the things that really caught my eye is a lot of the work that you did and that you do, as part of, the your community work. So tell me, I think one of the things that I see it just as a theme is the importance of building a network, networking, but also I think even more from our perspective, being black in tech is how, it's not just about succeeding, but also figuring out a way to reach back and pull other people in. And I see you doing that, through your community work. So tell me a little bit more about that.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it really just started out as just a means to kind of get my foot in the door in tech. I mean, I really didn't know which way to go. I just know I had to like do something. I couldn't really. It wasn't much help for me, so I said, let me volunteer. Let me try to see where I can help, even though I need help. Um, but that's kind of how it all started. I mean, I started out with Black Boys Code because it was just an opportunity for me to help and also learn things as well. And then I guess with my community that I'm building, I was just doing that because I was going to all the events and people kept asking me how you keep finding out about these events and things like that. And I just got tired of telling person after person. So I said, I'm just start an email list. And then from there, I mean, people have really been receptive to it. People thank me all the time for it. I was actually going to stop quitting and I was going to quit it. And then I had a good response. So it's really building now. It's really got some legs now. So and then just, I got into tech because I just wanted to feed like the businesses I was starting. So I really didn't have like a big passion for it. I was just like, I want to get a good job because I had friends who had jobs and businesses. So I said, I want to get a good job so I could feed my businesses. And then as I got into it, I was like, wow, this is something that I like. And I gained some pride too, like being black in tech, being like a few of us, and then just wanting to help people know that it's not impossible. So that's kind of where it all started.
That's amazing. So one of the hardest things to do is to break into tech as a software engineer.
Mhm.
It's that in my mind, I don't think that there are more harder things to do. So tell me about what that journey like was for you, learning how to code, learning all the different things that you have to know, because it's beyond code. Like you have to understand. I think it definitely favors people who have, let's say, a computer science background to understand like the arrays, linked lists, all of those fancy
Mhm.
data structures and algorithms. So how did you navigate, being able to learn and onboard all that information?
I mean, I really just kept. I mean, it's really just all about continuing to try. I mean, I knew that I could just get down. I knew I could learn anything. Um, but it was just continuing. I mean, it's definitely tough. You really got to seek out help. You really got to seek out mentors, because when you're starting out in tech, you don't really know what you don't know, and then you don't know how big, how vast it is. You don't know how many avenues you can go to until you like, oh, I could do this, oh, I could do that, oh, I could do this. So it's really about just fine tuning, knowing the direction you want to go, and then just keep going. Just keep going, keep learning. But I really think it helps to like find somebody who can direct you. So, but yeah, just keeping at it really is the key.
Yeah. And if you just joining us, welcome again. This is the Working in Tech podcast. We're talking to Torrance, who's a software engineer. I see you, William. Salute to you too. And LinkedIn user didn't really show your name. Hello to you as well. He's gonna be dropping a lot of game today about how he transitioned into tech, and I hope that his story inspires all of you on their journey to kind of like pursue their dreams. And I hope that you all are able to reach your goals. So speaking about goals, I think one of the things that you touch on is like seeking out that help. But from my experience, I know it's not always easy. Even recently, like someone within my network wanted to reach out to someone else within my network, for a referral. And I did try to make the connection, but it didn't work out, right? Um, there's no formula to it. But what are some of the strategies, for examples, that have helped you personally, right, in being able to make that connection and get that help that you need?
Well, first I started just going to a lot of networking events and seeing who I can meet. Because when I started out, I didn't really know how much. I didn't really know there was so many Black people in tech until I started going outside looking for it. So I started meeting people in that way and telling them what I'm trying to do, adding them on LinkedIn, and I started to get help that way. But also, I mean, YouTube is here and it's always going to be here. Google, YouTube, and I really started out on Google maybe for the first 2 months. Google and YouTube is where I really started out. It's where I really learned about which avenue I wanted to go. It's really how I learned how to build my LinkedIn, and it's how I learned that I should be networking. So yeah, just I think that's answered your question. I think so.
Yep,
But yeah.
yep. Yeah, yeah, it did. And that's so powerful. So, building that network, figuring out, I think YouTube definitely is like undefeated in the tech journey. The last person that I had on said the same exact thing. There's so much free information out there. I know like the hard work is kind of like filtering out and figuring the one that's valuable. But if you understand that like tech is that industry where people are making life-changing money, you're not gonna get not you're not gonna get something for nothing. Something has to give, right? So the thing that has to give is that work up front, the work to learn, the work to know, because on the back end is kind of like where you get that gratification. So I really like that answer. So in terms of that moment where it clicked for you, for example, because again, I know like you had you kind of like had a business administration background. You kind of like had a lot of entrepreneurship ventures.
Mhm.
How did you then kind of like switch it around and say, you know what, I want to go into tech, or I want to become a software engineer? Because that's not a direct like one-to-one switch. Like what made you think, and what made you connect to that kind of like opportunity?
Um, well, I mean, when I moved to Atlanta, I had already did some things that was kind of shocking to me. So I had started businesses. I was thriving. I was living on my own. So I was like, man, I could do. There's some stuff I could do. I can do things that I didn't think I could do. So when I thought about getting a profession, I was like, well, I'm not going to choose the easiest thing, or I'm not going to choose something that's anybody could do. I wanted to have some pride in whatever I did. So I said, let me see in tech. I would say, oh, okay, data engineer, software engineer, data scientist, all this stuff. So I was just like, I'm gonna pick one of these. I picked software engineering because it's like the foundation in tech. Like you build things, and
The
it's and
Holy Grail.
yeah, yeah. I wanted to build businesses, and I wanted to be a part of building tech that built businesses. So that's kind of how I chose software engineering.
Yeah. So if we kind of like had to deconstruct it, because like one of the conversations that people have a lot, is about technology. Oh, you should learn Python or focus on JavaScript or whatnot. How little or how much does that matter? And like, if you want to give advice to someone starting out, what's kind of like the easiest path or maybe the most rewarding path from your perspective?
In terms of like learning a language.
Learning the language, kind of like, or setting yourself up for success, because I imagine that languages are more challenging than the others, right? So like what's the maybe like the better way for someone approaching that journey to go about it?
Um, so are you asking?
So, okay, like, I'll break it down this way.
uh,
What's a good language to learn as a
Oh,
beginner? And what also is kind of like the path to, so aside from the language, let's say, for example, it's like focus on learning a language, then maybe go learn data structures. Like, what's the kind of like
um,
way to structure that learning?
I was definitely got started with learning a language because you can't do anything if you don't know a language. Someone told me, which was true, to start out with Java because Java spells everything out, and it'll be easier to learn the following languages. Like Python is a good and popular language, but it doesn't really set you up to be able to learn new languages because it's just so compiled. It's just so short. It doesn't. It's so easy. So Java is definitely a good language. Yeah, definitely just start out with the languages first, and then go to data structures. That'd be good too. But it just depends. You can go either data structures after that, or you can really just learn how to build things. But both are essential to getting a job. So it doesn't matter which one after that. But I definitely will focus on data structures first.
Amazing, amazing.
Mhm.
So, hey, my namesake Juwan. Great to have you here. He says, yeah, LinkedIn is key. Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
That's my
Um,
boy.
Yeah. And Amisha, welcome to the stream. We're definitely gonna take Eric. Yeah, let's go, Terrence, for sure. Let's go. Um we're definitely gonna get to the questions later, but definitely if you have any questions as we're kind of like having the conversation, feel free to leave them in the comments. We're gonna take them all at the end. One other question that I had for you is, so in terms of like, the earning potential, because I know like money's always a big motivator, right?
Mhm.
For a lot of people. So like, what's the earning potential for someone in tech?
Um, Man, you can make.
And, oh, sorry, not in tech. I meant, as a software engineer.
Oh, as a software engineer, I mean, depending on the company, you can make millions. Depending on the company. But definitely starting out at super entry level, you can start out at like 90,000, but you definitely can make. I mean, I've heard of people who make millions as a software engineer. So, yeah, for sure. And if you could talk about job stacking too. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but people do that too. So the earning potential is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Again, I completely agree with that. There's definitely a lot of strategies, for example, job stacking, as you mentioned, but also like maybe even like going deep on your knowledge and like just getting, because I would imagine that as you go out more senior, your earning potential would also be greater.
Yeah.
Great. So. I think one other like question that I had is, you have all these experiences from like the different businesses you ran, managed. Did any of those transition over to actually you working in tech?
Um, I can't say directly. I could say maybe just like intrinsically, maybe like just the things I learned in business, things like grit and just focus, attention to detail, um, things like I mean, just not quitting. That's those type of things I learned in business that I applied to becoming a software engineer, which really probably helped a lot because I mean, the journey to try to get in is a tough one. So, if you just can just muster up the energy to keep going, or just know beforehand that this is going to be real tough. Those are things I learned in business, and those things that's what helped me get in.
Amazing. So, again, I think something I'd mentioned, was the networking piece, so you building, your communities in the Atlanta tech scene. Can
Mhm.
you tell me, and maybe the audience also like, one of the things that's, the outcome or the byproduct. I think we see it here, for example, like your community showing up for you on this live stream, cheering you on and everything like that. But are there other like benefits for other people for people in terms of like building a community
Besides what? Besides what other?
besides them cheering you on?
Oh, yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a lot of referrals you can get from building a community. A lot of opportunities. I get a lot of opportunities in my DMs just from people I've met on LinkedIn, and they kind of like follow my journey and keep up to date with the things I'm posting. So I get a lot of opportunities from that, and just yeah, just building community and just it gives you a lot of opportunity because there are a lot of people who are doing a lot of great things who want help or they might think of you to put you in that position. So definitely just the opportunities, because you never know who could help you.
Amazing. So, for what was your learning journey like, right? Because there's so many pathways, as we mentioned. So, of course, you could go to a boot camp. You could kind of like raw dog it if you like, just go hard and figure it out on your own, which is not always the easiest way. You could go to college to go learn it. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways, but what was your own journey specifically like?
Yeah, so my journey, I just started out on YouTube at first, and then I got into well, not got into, I signed up for free code camp, which is just this free platform. You just learn coding. And then I went to Code Academy and I learned courses on Python and Java. And then after that, I was interviewing and I was trying to. All I knew was a language, and I was interviewing. And I found out that I really don't know that much. So now it's like I kind of need some help. I kind of need to find someone who could help me, teach me, or a boot camp. So I applied for different boot camps. I found this opportunity with this boot camp where they were working with a company to sponsor. So I was able to test in and get into that, and that really like opened up a lot of doors for me in terms of just learning because I didn't know what I didn't know. So there was so much that I learned, and it was just great to just have somebody teach you after you just teaching yourself for so long. So
Mm.
um, and then after that, did a lot of leak code because now I got some decent knowledge. I still don't know much, but I got some decent knowledge. So now I'm interviewing. Did a lot of leak code, trying to not bomb interviews, but that happened. So I bombed a lot of interviews, and then yeah, I finally did right on one. So yeah, that's how that was the journey.
And it's so interesting because, like, I would imagine that when you look back, you probably see many opportunities to have optimized, like your learning, your interview process, all of that.
Mm,
But how much of it is like, if I knew better, I would do better. But, or on the flip side of it, taking it as just being part of the journey, because, like you rightly said, you don't know what you don't know. But the good thing is, the more you go along in that journey, the more you find out what you don't know,
yeah.
right?
Right.
And it's also part of the process. Like it's okay not to know,
Hmm.
but if you keep trudging on, for example, you're going to realize I don't know enough, so maybe I should go connect to a mentor or go to a boot camp. Like, how much kind of like is either like get knowing quickly or just keep going because the path opens up as you kind of like unlock more levels.
Yeah, I mean it's the process. It's not a. I mean in the midst of it, you're like, man, if I would have do this, I would have got the job or I would have did this. But that's the process. Like you can't cheat the process. You got to go through it. Like I talked to like a bunch of engineers on the journey, and it was like all your interviews are just interviews you're gonna fail till you get your job, like basically. And you don't really
Mm.
want to hear that because you like, man, if I get an interview, that's an opportunity for me to, change my life and change the things I'm doing. But in actuality, it's just a stepping stone, and you're gonna fail because I mean these interviews are not something that you can just get wake up and do. So you're
That's
gonna fail.
absolutely.
You're gonna fail them, and it's just a part of the process. And then even it helps to know that before and after, but definitely on hindsight, you know that it's just a part of the process. But it's definitely good to know that in the process because it helps. If you don't have anybody, in your ear, kind of encouraging you and things like that. So, yeah, it's definitely a part of the process.
Okay. So, for those starting in their journey today, maybe they're coming from a non-traditional tech background or, they don't have a college degree or whatever else,
Hmm.
what's one thing that, they could do to kind of like boost themselves quite early in the journey because this journey is very tough and it's very hard, right? Like you already come as an entrepreneur, so
Mhm.
like facing failure or defeat is not new to you, right? But for a lot of people, it is, and it's like oftentimes like the promise of tech success is right here, but they don't tell you like the work is,
Yeah.
higher, right? So
Yeah.
like, how does one prepare themselves to not get discouraged?
Uh, Man, that's a tough one, man. Cause it's tough because if you just jump into it, you kind of get like punched in the face, and you don't really you're not expect. It's like I think it's just kind of like your experiences, what you went through in life, to really help you because it's not really something you can prepare for unless you've seen it before. So like for me, like what really helped me is I played sports for my whole life, so I learned a lot of like you know just a lot of character building was learned in sports. So I applied a lot of that stuff to how I did business, a lot how I, attacked becoming an engineer. It's a lot of things I learned in sports, like not quitting, being tough, being mentally tough, um, working hard, things like that, attention to detail. So if you're not like accustomed to things like that, or you haven't been through anything like that, it's no way you really can prepare for it. You kind of got to learn on the journey, or you either gonna learn or you're gonna quit. So um, but there, that's kind of how it goes.
So it's actually good that you talked about that because that was going to be my next question, right?
Hmm.
Um, One of the things I see that, there's always like very like big interest in the communities in sports. You know, but I think also it's like the interest and the opportunity don't always quite align in my eye because it's like there's so many people vying for so many few positions, and there's a lot of practice, hours, preparation that oftentimes is like a zero-sum game.
Hmm.
Let's say, for example, we're talking about basketball, like let's say 100 and 200 make it every single year. And
Hmm.
there's a very short window too, because if you don't maybe cut it in like that 3 to 5 years, it's gone.
Hmm.
Right. So it's like, as someone who's kind of like lived both journeys, what would you like to see more of, especially with like the youth people coming up, aspiring for success? Do you think that maybe people should focus more on other areas where the, I want to say like the bottom isn't so sharp, right?
Hmm.
Because, one of the things that I think about when I think about things like this is like in a given year, if you're the 400th best basketball player in the US, you're not doing anything. You're not
Hmm.
going nowhere.
Hmm.
If you're the 400th engineer in the US,
Hmm.
you're probably going to be clearing 500K a
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
If you're the 4,000th, you see what I'm saying? If
Yeah.
you're the 40,000 person, like you're going to be doing good.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think the opportunity is even bigger than getting hired. Because, for example, the person I had on before was an entrepreneur. The beauty about tech is that tech is not only useful when you go work for a company.
Hmm.
Tech as a skill is something that you can build for yourself. When
Right.
you think about like, you know, Twitter or Facebook or all these other tech companies, they're Apple. These are companies where somebody had a vision, they had the technology to back that vision up, and they were able to deliver a product that many, many years later is serving millions, if not billions of people. So again, kind of like with that framing, as somebody who's been through both journeys, what are kind of like your thoughts and perspective on that?
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody about this. I think I'm just talking in terms of like sports. I don't really think you have to pick. I just think people need to know the opportunities. They need to be aware. Like you don't have to choose. Really, you can do both. If you go to school, you can play basketball or football and be pursuing a CS degree. Or and then the things you learn in sports will put you above a lot of people when you apply it to the professional world. Um, I think it helped me a lot. So I don't think you really have to pick. I just think it's about being smart in what you're going after. Because I mean, if you're going after, say you want to be the best ever in whatever sport, you're gonna learn a lot of great things on the journey
Mm,
will help you in other areas in life. So yeah, I don't really think you have to pick. I just think it's just about have a knowledge of what's out there, what the opportunities are. Because when I was a kid, I didn't really know nothing about tech, or I didn't know nothing about engineering. I learned all of this stuff when I moved here, so to Atlanta. So it's just about just being knowledgeable and being aware.
Mm. So I think you've touched on something that I really like your perspective on combining because I do like many of the things that you said. Being, a software engineer, like I mentioned earlier, and I'm sure like is one of the toughest things. It's probably easier when you get into it, but
Yeah,
breaking in is the hardest part.
yeah,
And you being able to leverage on, because I imagine sports is not something that where you get pat on the back. Like if you're not good enough, you get sat on the bench, you get cut from the team. Like
right.
by default. So when you face adversity in other places, it probably doesn't sting as much, right? So I definitely agree on that perspective. But on the flip side of like the other part you were talking about is the awareness. This is something that I've encountered many, many times over, like even in my own journey where I kind of like came up in communities where being in tech was more popular, right?
Mm-hmm,
And at the same time, because I wasn't a computer science major, I didn't feel like I had the right to be there,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
And how I think about like how you didn't know, and so many other people tell me that what do you think can be done to kind of like raise that profile? Because ultimately, if you think about it, like you have Jordan, Kobe, LeBron, you
mm-hmm.
know, to kind of like look up to, but we don't have that same profile in technology. So how do we get that level up to where more people know I could play, football or basketball, but also kind of like write code on the side or build this apps or build this projects.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes people like like you doing things like this, raising awareness, and also just um and more people like me, who just bring in awareness and who are still representing, where they come from, or and the people who might feel like, I mean, that's not for me, because that was what I thought. I mean, when I was in school, I said that's probably for more Asian, or more Indian people, or Caucasian. And I really didn't feel like that had anything to do with me. So I think it takes, just representation, people, getting in certain positions and still, pulling people up and helping people and working with the kids, and um, taking any meeting with anybody who just wants to learn. Like in my LinkedIn, it's a lot of people who like DM me, wanting to meet. I mean, the meetings are, they don't help me at all, but I know there's somebody who really seeking some information, and I remember when I was seeking information, and nobody would help me. So it just takes people, just pulling people up when they get in those positions, and doing their best to show awareness, and puts things on LinkedIn. Like me, I don't really like being on LinkedIn. I don't really like, but I do it because it's gonna help me, and it's gonna help other people too. So yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. I really, really like that. And it's like ultimately because the more we create awareness, the more we kind of like raise that level. And I'm of the opinion that, one of the things I have seen about Black people that always inspires me is like how resourceful, we are.
Hmm.
Especially like, oftentimes if you think about how you probably came up with your skill, like you in basketball, for example, like it wasn't that everything was set out in the beginning. It just started with a vision and a passion, and you started to connect the dot as you kind of like went along. And
Yeah.
all people who make beats, like it's not. There's no training school to go learn Fruity Loops and all these things, right? But people figure it out one way or the other. I
Yeah.
remember, like now it's probably even easier to download online. Before you kind of like had to go buy a bootleg like Fruity Loops on some
Yeah.
in some paper around the corner to kind of like make those beats. And like you see them, they're some of the best producers in the world, right? So it's like if they can manipulate software to do that, imagine what we could do at scale when more and more kids. I'd say something like I don't even think like the best black engineers don't even work in tech yet.
Hmm. Right.
And it's like just because they're not even playing the game yet, right?
Hmm.
Because they don't know about it. So
Yeah.
it's like we could see way more creativity, way more passion unlocked when more people become aware and kind of like feel that unpack, which is so important. Like being able to see yourself in a role, being able to kind of like feel like, you know, and the more personalities, because oftentimes too, like you see someone who looks a certain way, even if they're black, you might think, well, he's a geek, so he's able to do it, right?
Yeah.
But if you see someone who kind of like is more laid back, kind of like, speaks with the same slang, speaks with the same kind of like mannerism that you do, then it becomes even a bit more believable, right? Like it's like, oh, that dude is exactly like me. Like I could, if he could do it, then I could do it.
Right. That's exactly like my thing. My thing. I mean, like I don't really. I think that's a big reason why I do because I know I'm not a typical engineer. I mean, and I know people will see themselves in me. So
Mm,
that's exactly it for me.
absolutely, absolutely. So, in terms of like resources, I know you kind of like mentioned a few of them, but maybe you can go a bit more in detail just for people who are not, aware. For example, like what is like, LeetCode, free code camp, all of these different things have helped you on the way. So just break it down for anyone in the audience who doesn't really understand what those things are.
Okay. Well, free code camp. That's somewhere where if you're like don't know anything, you could start out there. It's free, um, and you could just start out there, just going through the courses. There are many different courses you could choose from. They have extensive YouTube pages where they give you hours and hours of trainings. That's a good place to start. And there's different things like educative.io, Code Academy, Solo Learn, things like that where you can go just learn engineering principles, learn engineering languages, things like that. And then there's a number of boot camps as well that you can get in tune with. LinkedIn. I mean, that's where you go and you just learn how to take interview challenges and you can do as many as you can. They got easy, medium, hard, and that's where a lot of engineers really go to, you know, get ready for an interview. So yep, those are it. And but I would definitely suggest anybody starting out to definitely get in a boot camp somehow, some way. Because yeah, it's a lot of technology out there. Like I work with people at the biggest bank in the world, and I ask questions and they don't know. Like so, it's like if these people don't know things, I mean, you should probably get some help.
And that's so important. And I want to double click on that because it's like I remember I made a tweet one time and it was kind of like reflective of how I was feeling. It's like 90% of, and I know it was kind of like exaggerated, but I said something like 90% of what you need to succeed in a role, you will learn on the role.
Yeah,
I know it can be misconstrued as, for example, like, oh, you're not going to know anything to get the role. That's not possible. You have to kind of like be good enough because you're going to go talk to. I always tell people, like, you can't BS your way through most of his interviews because the person who's your hiring manager does the job that they're hiring you for.
yeah,
So it's not like you can't just say some things that you learned somewhere. Like you really got to be in it. And even if you finesse in it, they could tell.
right, yeah,
But on the flip side, you're not going to have the business context. You're not going to know the internal technologies. You're not going to know the systems. And oftentimes, for example, let's say your company is using AWS and you know it as a standard system. When you go in there, they might have done so much development work. They might have coupled onto other new technologies there where it's like, even if you worked on AWS before, you've not worked on that AWS. You've not worked on that cloud platform. Because, for example, they could be doing like some form of data streaming where AWS service wasn't working for them. So they had to kind of hard code something. That's something you have to learn. They might kind of like have the API function in a different way that you're used to. So it's like to get comfortable in that role is going to take a lot of time. Not necessarily because you don't understand the foundational concepts, but because you have to learn how specifically they work in that specific role. And I know maybe it might differ from like role to role, but especially my role, I see that a lot because again, I just see how people treat that differently. So, how much, because that's another thing that I wanted to touch on quick, a little bit is that people oftentimes, especially even never been in a role, you never know how much you have to prepare, right? So it's like, do you have to know everything, or how comfortable do you have to be to start applying? Because there's something like applying too late.
yeah,
you might apply too early, which I don't really think because oftentimes if you apply too early, you're gonna find your level real quick and keep working. But
Yeah.
you can definitely apply too late, where it's like you should be testing yourself frequently. What's kind of like your perspective on that?
Um, I think well, see, me, when I started, I started applying like just after I learned the language, which was, I mean, I don't know if it was too early, but it was early. But I say that because you gonna fail, but you know, you start to learn what expected in the interview. So I don't think, yeah, I don't really think it's too early. There's a too early thing. I think there is a too late. But I think you should learn a language and then learn how to interview, like do some mock interviews. And then after you do a few mock interviews and you learn the language, I mean, I think you can apply because you're gonna need that interview experience. Like you're not gonna learn a language, then do mock interviews to where you feel great, and then go to a real interview and pass it.
And just fast. Exactly.
I don't
I
think.
feel like even the pain
Yeah,
sometimes, like I lost an opportunity once where it's like it's my dream opportunity. I killed every single interview in that process. I missed one question in almost like a 7 interview loop, and it cost me the whole opportunity. I
wow.
feel like the pain of that is so real that someone can tell you to prepare for interviews a million times and you're not going to prepare that way because you've never felt that pain
Right,
because you felt what it meant to have somebody with something within your grasp and then lose it.
right.
It brings a new level of focus
Yeah,
beyond what anybody can tell you. Like you could watch a million YouTube videos and they're not going to tell you that feeling.
you're right. Fact. Yeah. Definitely need that. Definitely need that them game reps, that game experience, to really do well. Because after a while, you know, you start to prepare. After you failed a few, now you're just relaxed. You know, now you just like whatever happens, happens. You know, so yeah, for sure.
To kind of like not, well, I wanted to say not to use a sports reference, but that's exactly it. If, LeBron was taking free throws at the end of like quarter 4 to kind of like level the game in a championship match. It's still gonna feel pressure, but it's
Mhm.
not gonna feel the pressure of a rookie. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
He's won so much. Like losing that one title is not gonna define his career.
right. Facts.
Well, it might not define the career of a rookie as well, but they don't know that yet. You
Yeah,
see what I'm saying? So
yeah,
it's like even the energy that you bring is different.
yeah.
And like you can only get that when you've been in a situation.
Hmm.
You can't get it from imagine what it feels like to be in a situation.
Yeah, it's facts. Facts.
So we're less than 20 minutes away from the audience Q&A. I see we got a question already for Misha. We're going to get to that shortly. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments and drop some fire emojis, drop some love emojis. Let's show Torrance some love. He's dropping a lot of game, a lot of gems for free on his journey, and I'm really inspired by your story. So, you know, I think kind of like looking back again, just one more time. Um, what were some of the things, for example, especially in getting that first role? What were some of the things that were pivotal for you, right? So, I've heard many people say things around like, maybe it's a mentor somewhere, or someone who guided them, or some resource they found somewhere, whether it was a video, or someone just taking a chance, right? And I see that as a pattern. Like it doesn't work for so long, and then it works, and then maybe some big break. What was that for you? What was that like for you?
Well, I think the key things for me was, I mean, I had someone who really took me under their wing and helped me, just be sharp in an interview. And uh, also just that was like my third time applying to that position. So I kept going. I kept trying. So that was key too, because after a while, I kind of just knew what to expect. You know, so that was key too. And yeah, just networking and seeking out, you know, help. Also, you really got to put in the work. You know, really got to put in the work. So you can do all that stuff, but you really gotta work. You really gotta be, because in the interviews, like you don't know what they're gonna ask you, so you have to be ready for a lot of things. So, and to be ready for a lot of things is a lot of work. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So, first question we got, we're now in the Q&A, is from Amisha, and she says, "Was there a major learning curve when you started your position?"
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But the thing is, with that, I mean, I'm still learning it. But the thing with that is, um, you cool with that because he was just learning for free for so long. So it's okay. Like it's not really a big deal to be learning on the job. You're gonna be so happy that you just get paid to learn. So it's not. I mean, the learning curve is okay with me and probably anybody who's in my position because after you've done so much work, not getting paid to learn. So yeah,
Yeah, William is giving you a shout out saying, you've been putting in the work. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
that's my boy.
Yeah. Um, so, and I don't know if you want to kind of like, double click on what's on those learning curves or where for you just to help anybody who, because I think like, especially even like I've been in tech for, more than a decade at this point, but even like being in a new role now is still kind of like challenging, right?
Mm,
And to the point, I think that naturally, like I'm a person who likes to like perform, I like to achieve, I like to kind of like get some wins under my belt because
yeah,
I mean, people talk about imposter syndrome. I kind of like always like to feel that I'm on the opposite side of that. I
yeah,
not in an arrogant way, but I always feel very confident. I feel like I could do it. So it does bother me when I don't feel like I'm doing much or I feel like I'm struggling a little bit.
yeah. I
And to
was
where
just
like,
yeah. I'm going through that now, but you just gotta tell yourself be patient. I mean, when you get to another level, you starting over. So it's
mm,
just appreciate that you just got to a new level. You just gotta build again. Because I remember feeling like this when I started trying to code. And now I'm in a new job where it's like I'm sitting in the meetings, not saying anything because I don't know what they're talking about. So but you want to as quick as you can and feel like you're valuable, but that's a process. That's a process. So you just gotta know that it's paid. You gotta be patient, and it'll come for sure.
I've been in so many meetings where I hear the phrase, there's no such thing as a stupid question, right?
Right.
I
But they all
only
feel
learned
like stupid questions.
I only learned that the meaning of that recently because like sometimes I want to ask a question, but I'm like, wait, what if, you know what? Never mind.
Yeah, yeah,
That's literally the feeling. It's like I'm gonna act like I get it because like I don't know, maybe this is kind of like flying over my head, but
yeah.
yeah, that's definitely an interesting. But I completely agree with your assessment. It's like just be patient with yourself, and like there's so much like, especially when you're working. I've mostly worked on for the major part of my career on like consumer facing stuff. I think it's a lot easier to understand many things in that space. You're thinking
Hmm.
about customer acquisition, things like that. When you're working on more internal role systems and applications, I think it gets a bit more tricky because
Yeah.
if you think about like many things, like you've experienced some of them in the real world. So even if you don't know it, you can maybe relate to it. Let's say, for example, you go and start learning something like a SAP or an ERP system. There's going to be so much system context there because you've never seen it. Most people have never seen it. So
Hmm.
it's like, you're just not going to know. And it's not a bad, I mean, it's going to be bad if after like a year you still don't know. But in the moment, it's okay to not know, but ramp up quickly to find out. I think Misha has another question. So how long did it take you to feel comfortable in your role?
I'll let you know when I get comfortable.
That's a good question. That's a good question and good answer. So we have another question from Jason. It says, I'm struggling to learn coding on my own. How did you stay motivated when you were teaching yourself to code?
Uh, I mean, it's not really a nice way to say this, but I mean, you say that you're either gonna do it or you're not. So I mean, I'm not saying that to anybody. I said that to myself, many times. Like,
Mm,
you're either gonna get it done or you're not. Like, do you want it or you don't? So
mm,
I mean, I think the thing with motivation to me is like it's not really real. It's like sprinting. You could
mm.
you can't sprint for 2 days. You can't sprint. You can only sprint for a short amount of time. So it's just about discipline and staying focused, knowing what your goals are, and just putting in the work every day. And even if it's for a short period of time, you did something, or and then you'll grow from there. But I mean, motivation, trying to be motivated, I don't. It's not the thing for. I mean, some people are, but when you learn it, it's tough to stay motivated, and especially something like coding. So it's tough to stay motivated. But if you have some goals, you have some things you want to do with your life, what I'm saying? Just put that in front of your brain. But it's either you're gonna do it or you're not. It's really about discipline, not really motivation.
I really like the part where you talked about sprinting because I do feel like there was something that I heard about like burnout that helped me reshape even my understanding of the concept. And it is true for me to an extent. It's like people really get burnt out when they're putting in a certain amount of effort, but they're not getting, that payback at that
Yeah.
same level.
Mm-hmm.
And I think oftentimes like that's what often separates, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but the winners from the losers, right? It's
Right.
that when you can't get that instant gratification, are you able to reset? And it's gonna be days. Like we're all gonna lie if we say like, I maintain my motivation or my excitement about this opportunity at the same level when I kept hitting roadblocks.
Right.
There's gonna be days where you're like, you know what? Am I fooling myself? Like, does any of this even make sense? But I
Right.
think oftentimes what separates is like when that dust settles, when that frustration goes away, are you still able to find that level again to where you want to keep going?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it's almost like a glass half full, glass half empty scenario where you have to be motivated, almost like see it like I'm not gonna waste the effort that it took me to even get to this moment. Because
Right.
oftentimes it's like some people are like, I don't want to waste any more effort going forward. But it's
Right.
like, nah, if I put in even 2 hours into this thing, I'm willing to put in 1,000 more hours to get to 1,002, then lose this two I already put in. And
Yeah.
it's like kind of like being on that paradigm, especially when it works. And this model has worked for so many people, right? Um,
Yeah. And then it's just about just like knowing things about life. I mean, or just believing things about life. Like for me, I was something that I like hung my hat on is that if I put in the work and I don't quit, the only outcome is for me to get to where I'm
to
going.
win.
That's
Oh,
what I'm saying. No, that's the only outcome. It's like simple math to me. So I think that's kind of what I hung my hat on every day too. Is like I wasn't gonna quit, and I was gonna put at least I was gonna do a little bit at least today. And so don't be focused on when it's gonna happen. Um, just do the work.
that is facts, and that's even like it's true. Like when you're trying to break in, but even in a market like this, because it's so funny. Like I kind of like got in an interview at Render ATL when I was in Atlanta a few weeks ago, and someone was asking me a question about when I made my transition into tech, like how easy was that, and going to new roles, and I told him like, you know when I was looking for that role, my mindset was basically like, first of all, I thought it was going to be easy. It wasn't. But then I
Mhm.
just said, somebody's going to mess around and make a mistake and hire me. Like that was, so
Yeah.
basically I was just waiting for someone to slip up. And I think like when you have that mindset, it's a different place
Yeah.
entirely. Cause it's like at that point, you don't even have any expectation. It's just like something somewhere is going to crack
Hmm.
and then they're going to mess up.
That helped me too. Yeah, that's helped me too because I would go out, to these networking events, and I would see people who are engineers, and I would be like, I mean, I'm kind of as smart as you, like, so how did you, when somebody just really helped them, then so somebody gonna help me too eventually. So
Yeah.
yeah, I thought the same thing.
Amazing. So, Maxine asks, oh, before we go to Maxine's question, William has another gem here. Says, there's so many parts to being a software engineer, coding, networking, continuous learning, asking for help, advocating for a team, sales, getting buy-in for a project, etc. And that is so true. I think that's also one of the parts of tech that's so underestimated, right? Because it's like, people just think I'm just gonna go do one thing and then be done. I
Hmm.
think later on, when you get really good at it, it doesn't feel like you're doing many things, but
Hmm.
those are almost many skills that you have to learn. For example, when I would hear like, communication is one of the, most important skills for you to learn, I actually thought it was cliche, like, but the more I learned it, the more I realized how important it was.
Yeah.
In fact, like one of the things that I on Twitter recently was the fact that there's a common saying that people say. It's like, oh, I'm responsible for what I say, but I'm not responsible for what you hear. And that couldn't be like that's the most untrue thing anyone ever said. Because if
Yeah.
you think about like the importance of communication, let's say, oh, I wanted you on this podcast. Imagine I came and I insulted you and said, come on this podcast. And I
Yeah.
and then I turn around and say, I'm responsible for what I
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
The goal of communication is to be successful. So
Right.
whatever I would need to say to get you to come is what's important. It doesn't matter how I feel about it. If
Hmm.
I'm saying something to someone else, it matters how they feel about it.
Hmm.
And I think once you start to put on that perspective, you might even say less words, but be more effective.
Hmm.
Why? Because you're communicating in a way that somebody understands. But you then see that that's one skill that, for example, helps you get hired, helps you get teams to back what you're saying, helps you to get funding and budget for the ideas that you have, help
Yeah.
you get backing. And when things don't go well, it's the same reason why someone is going to say, it's not his fault that it went wrong. You know what? We're going to back him anyway.
Hmm.
Versus if you are the kind of person who says, I'm only responsible for what I say, when things go wrong, the same way like you dish it out to people, that's the same way it comes back to you. So
Hmm.
it's like, it's so, so important.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
So Maxine is asking, what should I look for in a good bookend?
Um, I think you should look for um, I think frameworks that are popular or not popular, but frameworks that are useful in the industry right now, the most useful. Um, so like Python and Java are really good um, things to learn in the boot camp. Along, but definitely look for a full stack approach as well, because they'll give you a big scope of just what engineering is all about, what it takes. Um, but yeah, don't make sure you're not really getting into a boot camp where they're learning things that are on their way out the door or things like that, because there are still a lot of boot camps that are teaching things that aren't really as useful,
Relevant.
yeah, and
Mhm.
relevant. So definitely make sure you're learning some relevant technologies. I think that's most important when you're looking for a boot camp.
Absolutely. And I think also check out reviews.
Yeah,
If people have gone through it and it sucks, they're gonna typically put it online. I think, and that's one thing that I just realized is so important in this journey. You have to be willing to do research. Like
yeah,
you have to be willing. Ultimately, like I think I like what you said about like Google being your starting point. There's so many things that you're gonna cut out the way. In fact, I want to say like this because I see people kind of like get in my, DM sometimes and ask things like, "Oh, you know what? I'm thinking about this. What is that?" Like, you're not asking helpful questions because as a product manager, as someone who's kind of like who's now in a solution architect role, there are certain things that I know that you can't find the answers to online, or that's maybe going to take too much time to find the answers online. For example, even like what helped in a boot camp, that's an experience thing where somebody can guide you,
yeah,
but it takes a certain level of knowledge. For example, it's like, oh, for example, you come and say, I'm struggling. Like I see this boot camp online that's costing $1,500 versus this one that costs 15K. I see that they're teaching these technologies. I see that they're teaching this other one is teaching these technologies. Do you think it's a wise, investment to go put all this money when it's kind of like similar? Because I've seen this review, I've seen that review. It almost feels like a very important question where you've done your homework, right?
mhm,
But don't just say like, what's a good this or what's a good that without any like inclination, because ultimately it's like you want to get into tech, but you want me to go do the work to find the information for you.
yeah,
While that in itself is not necessarily bad, but when I give you that information, it's almost an indication that you're not going to do anything with it. You see what I'm saying? So it's like be the person and it's so funny, like when you do that work, you're going to find out that you find more people who are willing to help you when you're already helping yourself than when you're kind of like waiting. So it's like you have to be comfortable finding answers on your own. It's so important.
Yeah, but yeah, I definitely know what you mean because I get that all the time in my DMs. But I kind of push back from feeling like that is because I remember how I felt when I was in the beginning, you know, and
Mm,
and I'm is you just don't really know where to go and you don't really know what to research. And like when you get to our position, well, like not your position, but I'm not really nowhere yet. But when you get somewhere in your position, all like these new questions, they feel kind of dumb because you know you're so far along. But people are just really trying to just figure things out. So yeah,
mm,
but what I try to do is tell them, listen, because I do feel like that too. But I also have some grace for it because they don't really know what they don't.
mm,
So
mm.
I try to tell them, listen, you got to do some of your own work. You know, you got to figure this. You got to go look and figure out. Because a lot of people say, well, where should I go? I say, well, you got to do research to figure out the path you want to take first, and then you can come to me with questions. Um, but I definitely feel that. But I think sometimes people we just gotta give grace, and have a heart.
That's definitely an important way to put it. I like that. I like that. So another question, Trey. I'm worried about job security, especially in 2024. How stable do you find the tech industry compared to your previous career?
um, I mean that's tough. I mean, well, compared to my previous career, I mean I was an entrepreneur. I was doing my own thing. I'm still a big advocate for business and entrepreneurship, but um, I mean you don't really. I mean there's uncertainty there, but I mean there's a big upside there too. So I mean I think only you can really figure out what that is for you or how good or bad it will be for you. I think I would definitely bank on I would definitely bank on going for it than not. But there's definitely I mean that's a real feeling too. There's definitely uncertainty. But once you get a job, I mean you can get a job somewhere else. So I mean, you know, what that the hardest thing about this is just getting in. I think after that it's kind of easier. I don't know if it's still as easy because I see people, still struggling after they've had jobs, but it's definitely easier than breaking in. So once you got that skill, you can use it.
Amazing. So we have another kind of like comment says, yes, we have to be compassionate, yet encourage them and guide them so they don't go down a rabbit hole. And I completely agree with that. I think it's kind of like a hybrid approach. And I think that was also what I was trying to communicate. Maybe I didn't say it correctly. It's that, of course, you need guidance at almost every step of the journey. But I think what's helpful also is like, even today, and maybe you can speak to this, like developers that have been in the industry 20 years are going out and still spending time in chat gpt and stack overflow because you're not going to know there's literally going to be a new stack tomorrow that you
Right.
have to go research. So in itself, to be successful, it's a memory you have to build, right?
Yeah.
Like I literally like I'm watching videos right now in this moment about like Kafka topics and PubSub and things like that. Like it's so important, right? Because oftentimes there's so much you can learn on your own, but there's other things where you can learn by even driving the conversation. But you're gonna learn at a much higher level. For example, if I come into a situation with, let's say, 20% of the information and I start a conversation, I'm going to learn more than if somebody were to give me that first 20, then I
Mm-hmm.
can't learn anything on top of that because I don't even have the base foundational knowledge. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more about like doing that initial legwork such that when that, because if you think about it, like even your time is a finite resource, right? So you
Yeah.
can only teach someone so much or
Mm-hmm.
dedicate so much amount of time. It's that so when you complement those two things, it just becomes this like superpower where you're able to leverage your mentors or industry ads or whatever, and then build on your own knowledge, and you're making it more valuable. So I think Anisha's question, which is another great one, is like, what are needed certifications to be marketable for a software engineering position? I like this one.
Well, I mean, I can only speak for me. I didn't really have any real certifications. I mean, I had certifications from I guess little self-teaching platforms. They're not real certifications. They just give you something to say you completed a training. You can post it on LinkedIn. It looks good, but it's not really respected certifications. But I think the most important thing is just I think a boot camp is good certification, but I think the most important thing is like being able to show what you know. So like a portfolio is really good. I don't think from what I hear, I mean I got a lot of recruiter friends. They're not really looking at certifications. They're looking at portfolio and your experience. If you don't have experience, you should have a portfolio. And even when you do have experience, people have a portfolio. So portfolio is probably going to be your best friend for sure.
I
But
think you got. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say also like um, positions where they kind of guide you into the position are good things for people to look out for. Like I don't know if you know about Microsoft Leap, that program.
That's a good one.
JP Morgan has the Etsy program.
Yep, that's
Um,
another good one.
um, what else? I think Netflix has something like that. Pinterest has something like that. Those programs, they're not easy to get into, but those are like the things really people like in my position should go for because they already know that you don't know much and you're trying to learn and you're getting paid to learn. And after that, you got a good chance of getting a job. So things like that is yeah. That's I hope that answers the question. But yeah.
I completely agree, and those are really great ones that you share. I definitely think that more companies actually need to do that because I think there's so much that you have to do to get good enough to get into like the regular positions that I think kind of like those bridge positions. I think the JP Morgan ETA program is one of the best that I've seen. So I used to lead a boot camp, and they were one that we kind of like work closely with, and some of our students actually got in because I like that 2 year fellowship model. It gets them to a really good point to where it's now easier to transition. So I really, really like that program. And I think it's also designed because oftentimes, even when some of those programs exist, I think they kind of like they create this pattern to where it's almost like they still kind of like maintain the college graduate expectations,
Mhm.
whereas they say like we're trying to go non-traditional. The
Yeah.
ETA program is one that's actually really like, for example, by my understanding, they're not focused on lead code and things like that. They actually really focus on like doing the hackathon and you passing and you
Well,
being able
well,
to
no,
like.
you definitely gotta get to you definitely gotta pass leak code type questions for sure. Because that's the program I'm in. That's how I got
Oh,
in.
okay.
So
Oh,
yeah, so definitely gotta know your stuff, but it's just more easier with things like that because they're ready. They were looking for people like you. You know,
hmm.
I think when that's why networking is very important because like when you're starting out, the entry level positions are probably most most importantly geared to new graduates.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I'm saying.
when they see you, they're like, and then the jobs that you should be going for, you not really qualified for. So
That's true.
you're not getting that either. So that's why you really got to network. So you can meet somebody who might see what's not on the resume um, in you. So those programs really look for people like that. So that's good.
Yeah. So again, I think someone was asking, can you share the name of the programs again? I think we're gonna leave it in the comments, but the two that we shared here is Microsoft Leap. Leap is LEAP. And then there's JP Morgan ETSA, that's Emerging Technology Software Engineering Program or something
It's
like that, ETSE.
emerging talent software engineer.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, emerging talent, yeah. So it's a program. Yep, those are the two that I've worked with personally. So I think those are great. But there's other ones like that.
Mhm.
Again, research. I think if you do research, you'll probably be able to find the
Yeah.
other ones too. But those two are really great. Um, so we're kind of like a little over time, but this has been an enjoyable, satisfying knowledge field. I definitely think that from all the comments, you can see that it's really impactful. But this is a part of the show where we'll give you that chance. If there's anybody you want to shout out, all the amazing people who came to support, there's anything, shout outs, last words. all of them together. Just
I want to shout out my boy William. Actually, William was he was like when I first started trying to learn code, he really helped me a lot. Um, my boy Jawan, I see him next weekend. Got a birthday coming up. Um,
happy birthday, Juwan.
Misha, I'm gonna hit you back, Amisha, in the DMs. Um, and I don't know who LinkedIn user is, but they've been commenting
Yeah.
a lot. So thanks for coming.
Thanks so much, LinkedIn user.
Yeah. But yep, I mean that's it. I mean, follow me. I'm Torrance Evans on everything. So
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. That's the show for today. Second Working in Tech live stream. Big announcement. The Working in Tech live stream, I actually been lazy about it, but finally got it on all the streaming platforms. So
yeah,
whenever you listen to, and that's a great thing. That's another reason why we bring this chat so that anyone on their journey can also kind of like listen. And now it's even way more easier to do it because now you could be driving somewhere, cleaning the house, cooking like Sylvia was doing, and still listen to it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Definitely going to share the links in the comments, like I said, and then look forward to seeing you all next week. Like, share, subscribe. If you think that this is going to help someone, feel free to share with them. Thank you so much, Sharon. It's really great having you.
thanks, brother.